It would be fair to say that this one photograph plus some research into the life of Ralph Bagnold inspired the idea behind this trip. Seeking a reprieve from the heat of Cairo, Bagnold and his chums went on ever more ambitious trips out into the desert. It was their combined skills of desert driving, navigation, survival and radio communications that led to the formation of the Long Range Desert Group in 1940. 70 years later, 4 of us met up in a tent in Peterborough to hatch a plan to do a similar trip ourselves. First we needed some hardware. I managed to find a 1943 Ford GPW and that would be our starting point. Restoration of the Jeep was entrusted to my son Matt Savage up in Derbyshire, so while he got down to ripping it apart, I went off in search of parts. Jeep Parts in Shrewsbury came up with most of the parts, including a new engine, and a big pile was starting to accumulate at Matt's workshop. The simple design and construction of the World War II Jeeps meant that very soon we were in a position to have the first test drive. A couple of months later and the first Jeep was on the road and ready for action. But we needed 2, so I dug deep and managed to find a 1943 Willys Jeep to go with the Ford. The Willys underwent a similar restoration to the Ford, and by 2011 we had 2 Jeeps ready for action. Running in parallel with the Jeep restoration was a marketing plan to try and attract 4 paying guests to help fund the project. A dedicated website with precise dates, costs and itinerary helped, along with a blog updated weekly with progress. On a freezing December day, we made a video to promote the fact that both Jeeps actually worked. Well, we've had a lot of fun down here in the woods and it's about -10 now, so we're drawing it to a close. But the important thing to remember is this Jeep, despite being nearly 70 years old, is equally capable to any modern 4x4. There's no traction control, no gizmos, no winches, just an old tow rope that we used when we got stuck. But the next stage in this Jeep's history is I'm going to be swapping this hat for this hat, and then we're going to take them to Egypt, Easter 2011, to run through the Sahara on some of the routes run by the Long Range Desert Group. So check out the website and hope you can make it. Yay! We hosted a couple of Jeep driving days in the Peak District and invited along those who'd shown an interest in our trip to try out the Jeeps. By the beginning of 2011, we had everything in place and it was looking good. Then came the Arab Spring and the overthrow of Mubarak. We decided to delay the trip for a year in the hope that things would settle down. And they did. By the beginning of 2012 we were in a position to take both Jeeps to Felixstowe and load them into a container to be shipped to Alexandria. Once in the port at Alexandria, we spent about 4 days in a smoke-filled room with various corrupt officials, until finally both Jeeps were allowed onto the road with Egyptian number plates and we were ready to head off. By now 2 days behind schedule, we wasted no time in driving first to Cairo and then south to Baharia, an overnight journey of 400 miles. Finally united with our logistics team, a small military attaché and a tourist policeman, we were ready to hit the desert. Soon the Sahara was weaving its magic. Smiles were broad, shoulders had relaxed, and we were enjoying what we'd set out to do. Three Castles at the western edge of the Gilf el Kebir was the furthest south we ventured. It seemed a fitting place to lay a wreath and put up a plaque to those who didn't make it back. From Three Castles up to the southern edge of the Great Sand Sea involved driving up the Aqaba Pass through the Gilf el Kebir. Running both jeeps as light as possible, this was a flat-out blast up a steep hill in first gear. Crossing the Great Sand Sea was a big responsibility for our guide and friend Mahmoud Murray. This range of dunes are as big as England, and it was expected to take us 3 days to cross them up to Siwa. For our evening refreshments, we took along exactly the same rum that the Long Range Desert Group used. Pusser's rum. It's very strong, but has a good flavour. The desert oasis town of Siwa was our first civilization in 10 days and a chance to get a shower, a hotel room and a puncture repaired on one of the jeeps. By the time we returned to Mina House Hotel, an old haunt of the Long Range Desert Group, we'd covered 1,200 miles of desert. Not bad for two 70-year-old jeeps.